I'd like to give you all a little bit of a behind-the-scenes look at one of the great perks of being a speaker here today. Believe it or not, we get free, almost unlimited access to the vast archives of Shutterstock. And as a photographer, I really don't have a shortage of images, but I must confess then that it was in a moment of weakness, perhaps, that I sat down at my laptop, opened Shutterstock, typed the word journalist into the search bar. And I'd just like to share with you a few of the images that I found. It would appear that we're often perceived as being angry, typewriter-wielding people who smoke way too much. And I'm not joking, the caption for this last picture is "Journalist on the meadow preparing for his next article." Anyways, what I do know is that if you're brave enough to ask one journalist, never mind two, onto a stage, all they're going to do is just start swapping stories. Stories like that time when I was walking down Jamhuri Street. It's a beautiful Sunday morning. Must have been 7:30, 8 a.m. The light was perfect. Anyways, walking down Jamhuri Street. There's this guy. He's having a cup of coffee on the side of the street there. He sees me coming with the camera over my shoulder, and he says to me, "Hey, people in Tanzania don't like being photographed." Okay, I hear that every week. People shout it to me all the time. But he wasn't done talking. He said something else. He said something more that perhaps gives a little bit of an insight into the mindset of why he feels that people don't like being photographed. He said, "People in this society don't appreciate the value of the exchange of information." That's a bit of a mouthful. Let me say it again. People in this society don't appreciate the value of the exchange of information. Well, okay, so he sat back down with his cup of coffee, I kept walking, and a few moments later, as I was being detained and thrown in the back of a police truck for supposedly carrying an unlicensed camera in public, I thought, man, this guy, he was right about people not liking photography. But what about his other statement about people not appreciating the value of the exchange of information?
I mean, historically, yes. I mean, you're talking about the time of socialism. Not that I was there, but when you hear stories about how it was during that, you have a sense that sharing information was not that something that people, valued or necessarily were free to do. But then, like we had, for example, just one public radio station, one public newspaper, one television. And basically, these were the main channels of information that people received from the government and back to them. And so, historically, you can say he was half right about it. But then culturally, I would say Tanzanians are people who really love sharing stories. I don't drive, so most of my movements around town, I use Dar. And for those of you who don't know what Dar are, these are public transport. Now, usually, they're never full. They're always packed. But for some reason, this day, it was unusually empty. We were just about 5 of us. And I was sitting at the back, and I looked at the door, and I saw this guy, and he was negotiating something with the conductor and the driver. I didn't understand what was going on. But then he went out. A few seconds later, he came back. And he came smiling, and he looked at me smiling, like, what is going on? And he said, "Man, I feel so good. I really needed to pee." And I'm like, "You needed to pee? Why are you sharing this?" I was just wondering by myself, like, why is this strange guy sharing with me all these details about him feeling good just because he went to pee? And this was just about a week when I had just come back from Canada, where in public transport, everybody is just minding their business. Everybody has their headphones. And then I thought, wow, this is very Tanzanian. I mean, people don't mind sharing their stories. I mean, you sit in a Dar in just 15 minutes, the passenger next to you has shared everything about their lives. I mean, how their kids don't want to go to school, how their neighbors are cheating on their spouses. I mean, all these stories. And the journalist in me started thinking, wow, as a journalist, our business is just tell stories. We hear stories, and then we share stories. What if we would just sit there and just listen to people and hear what really people are saying to us?
Well, I think you're absolutely right. I mean, that's something that's so important. I remember back when I was in journalism school, that was really drilled into our heads, that from a subject's point of view, an interview should feel just like a glorified conversation. And that means we need to do a lot more listening. Granted, it can take time before subjects trust us, before they realize that we don't have an agenda or an ulterior motive, or they don't need to slide us this brown envelope across the table and say, you're coming to the event, right? But it's really something that is valuable, listening. And that gets me thinking of another story. The first time I went down to Jangwani to cover flooding here in Dar, it was a busy week for me. It's just absolutely chaotic. And I knew, man, okay, it's already the afternoon. At any time, an editor is going to come and say, hey, we hear there's flooding in Dar. Where's the pictures? And so I said, okay, fine. I'm going to give myself half an hour, get down to Jangwani, make some pictures, get back and file them and just be done with it. Just forget about it. Ran down, snap, 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 bang, 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 just kind of machine gun photography, in and out. And the reaction I got from the people in Jangwani was predictable. They were not happy that I was there. They really were guarded about my presence, and I felt guarded about being there, because it was weird that, I just marched into these people's misery and was like, hey, that's not how things are done. Anyways, every time I've gone back to Jangwani since then to cover flooding stories, and I've made the conscious effort to not do that. And I have to say, the transformation is remarkable. Even just standing there for 5 minutes, chatting with the coffee guy on the corner, being like, hey, so flooding, Polisana, I'm so sorry, is enough. That by just that action of listening, not just listening, but the action of not taking action and listening is enough to make that change.
And by listening, I mean, especially at this time when we have a great awakening of technology and social media, especially in Tanzania. A lot of people are using Facebook, Twitter, and WhatsApp. I think it's more than just one-on-one conversation. I think it also involves observing what exactly are people, talking about in this social media. Unfortunately, I would say we don't see this happening much in our media. It's not reflected that much in our media. I would say, yes, a lot of media these days have Facebook accounts, they have Twitter accounts, and they're trying to use this very well, but in most cases you would see like newspapers, for instance. I would argue their priority is not, extracting or using this social media as much, but rather it's trying to see how they can get their newspaper, for example, in towns like Kigoma, on the very same day. There are a lot of places, for example, in Kigoma, people get their newspaper on the second day. And I think this is what, is happening right now. I mean, of course, people are using this social media quite a lot. But this is not just for the media. I think even for journalists. We, especially here in Tanzania, there are still some of us who are journalists are not using that much of social media. For example, a few weeks ago, I was covering an event in Dodoma. It was a political event. And because we are used to, a spokesman come and share with us, give us a press release or shares with us what is going on, this time around at this event, this spokesman came and he did tell us everything that was happening at the meeting, but instead he shared information on Twitter. And so for a few journalists who did not have Twitter accounts, they went out complaining, like they missed information and this guy did not share with them right there, but then they shared it on a social media, on Twitter. And this is happening while people are consuming this or are using this social media very much. For example, WhatsApp. We are having election, we are on election time right now, and people, if you look at WhatsApp, how people are sharing all these videos, it's amazing. People are using this social media very much. And why this social media becoming such a great tools, there's a question of accuracy. I have received a number of press invites through WhatsApp, and they were all very correct. Until a few days ago, I received an invite that said, we are launching Dar es Salaam Rapid Transit. And I went there. It was totally something different. And I had to grab my cameraman and ready to give this story. We went there, and it was totally something different. And so there's a question that, yes, we have this great awakening of people using social media to exchange information, that we have to observe and see what the community is talking about. But where do we get accurate information that we can trust?
Well, that's just it. Newspapers, that's their job, is providing accurate information. But as newspapers are still having a very valuable place in society, more and more people are moving online, more and more people are spending time online. So where online do we get this information? Where can we find information that's not just out there on WhatsApp or Facebook, but information that's then been vetted by a journalist, checked for accuracy, put out in a style and in a format that we can consume and understand? Where can we find that? Where can we get breaking news online? Where can we find these things? I mean, yeah, the newspapers that do have websites, up until very recently, only updated them once a day late. I mean, happily we can say that in the past few months, at least one daily newspaper has changed their format completely, and they are updating throughout the day. But the content that's being put out there is still the same content that's going to be in print. It's these long 28-paragraph stories that online you're not in the mindset to consume. Online journalism is something different. There has to be a different content. There has to be there has to be listening. We have to listen to what people want to consume online.
And I think when we listen as journalists, not only we get news ideas, but we also get to understand what really people care about, what really interests people. For example, last month, we were just sitting, a bunch of us friends, just chatting, killing time. And then one of the friends shared with us a photo of a Bajaj with some slogan at the back. And it was very funny. And it appeared that almost every one of us there had received this or have seen this slogan before. And it turned out to be quite a jolly, discussion. We all got laugh, excited about these things, and we were very happy about this topic. And then I thought, wow, just a photo of a Bajaj that has slogan at the back has created such an exciting conversation among us. I thought this could make a great story. I went out and filmed a story on Bajaj slogans, and I was surprised the reaction I received from that. And I have covered almost all kinds of stories. I mean, human rights, environment, political, all kinds of stories. But I can tell you the reaction I received from people, how they just, love the story, how it relates to them so much. It's amazing. And where did I get this story? It was just through sitting around with a bunch of guys and just discussing and just hear them. What is it that gets them excited? What is it that, they make them laugh? That's where I get the story. But if you had asked me a year ago about a story on a Bajaj slogan, I would tell you were crazy.
That reminds me of another story. Last story, I promise. It's actually another story in Jangwani. Another round of flooding. And you could almost make a children's song out of it. The rain falls down, the floods come up, the journalist puts his hip waders on, puts his cameras on, his jacket on, and off we go. And ended up down in Jangwani, and as I was actually just walking right to the water's edge there, the sun came out. Must have been the first time the sun came out in about a week. It felt great. And then it was warm, so I took off my rain jacket, and you could see I was carrying all these cameras. And there's a guy with the whole crowd of people watching all the stuff going on, and he turns around, he spots me, and he just runs full tilt at me. And he is not happy. He's angry. He's just shaking with rage. He comes up and says, "Hey, what do you think you're doing here? Just you and your cameras, and you're trying to show how bad Dar is to the rest of the world." And just like the guy on Jamhuri Street, you have to diffuse situation, humor a little bit. And say, "Hi, my name is Daniel. I'm doing a story for an online community news source here in Dar." And this was the first time I'd been to Jangwani to cover a local story for a local audience. And the moment he heard it was for Dar, just like that, he changed instantly. He says, "Oh, well then, let me tell you about Jangwani. Let me tell you about why I feel this is like this. And you see this sewer here, it's blocked. Look at the trash. I mean, why don't we use the dump like everybody else?" On and on and on. And just like your passenger on the Dala Dala, I didn't learn any valuable information, but it proved that point, that people are interested in the sharing of information locally. And not only are they interested, they are sharing information. And moreover, it's not just happening in person, interpersonally, but it's happening online. People are sharing information everywhere. All we have to do with people sharing this content is we just have to bring journalistic standards to this content. And that's the cool thing, is that community journalism is bigger than just the politician making promises. It's bigger than just the celebrity who doesn't know who their baby's daddy is. It's bigger than all these things. Community journalism Community journalism is big enough for the little stories, big enough for the little stuff that perhaps isn't even really news. It's just helpful information for a newcomer or a visitor to Dar. All these types of things. That's what community news is for. That's the untapped power of it. And here's the thing. This goes for all of us. If we don't like what we're seeing in the media, in the news that we're consuming, both in print and online, but especially online, let them know. And if they're not listening to you, find somebody who does.
And the beauty about community media is that, especially the online community media, is that the audience also become a contributor. They also get to participate in sharing the information. Somebody's driving down the street, and they saw a car accident, they take a picture, and then they send it to community media, online community media, and then people, know that there is something happened. So if I need to change the route, I change the route. So it's not just about me as a journalist sharing to people whatever I think it's right for them, but also the community also get to share what they think it's important for them and spread it to others. And like your Jamhuri guy, he might be right, half right. Like Tanzanians, maybe sometimes they can be reluctant to share the information. But as the story of the guy, the Bajaji, the P guy in my Daladala story, this is changing, and it's changing so fast. And all we have to do as journalists is just listen and hear what really community are talking about and what really is interest them that we can share back to them. So yes, we see the media is changing really fast, but again, the relationship between a journalist and a community still remain the same. Yeah. Thank you.
Thank you very much.